Matthew's going to be sharing his screen, and we're going to be running through the agenda with everybody. Thank you so much for joining us in this digital space today. This is new for all of us. I'm actually having a bit of connectivity issues with at home here. I think 6 o'clock is a very popular, web time for a lot of people. So Pauline here, I thank you so much for your patience. If you hear background noises, that's my daughter making dinner. So full transparency, as we're all here sheltered in place too. So thank you again for joining us in this space. We're going to run through the agenda. So right now, Matthew is going to be the controller, and I will be your voiceover. So right now, we're going to be going into troubleshooting and check-in. Does anyone have any issues? Are there any problems? Everyone's connected well?
Yes. Great.
Okay, so then I'll go through a quick session overview. I want to thank our Chief, Nina Hawk, for being here with us. She's going to be presenting a water utility overview. Next, we will actually maybe take a little stretch break, get our blood flowing, then we'll come back again too. We want to make sure that we're able to be having some movement and some connectivity during this time as well too. Then we'll get into, we have a wonderful presentation from Karen Coppett and Samantha Green that will be sharing their conservation efforts with us and their water supply planning efforts as well too. So they will be offering a wealth of information. I guess I could say a well of information, make a little bad pun there for everybody. Thanks, thank you. Okay, and we'll be soaking that right on up as we're listening to their conservation efforts in terms of water use and planning. So we'll take another little stretch break again. Maybe we'll play a scavenger hunt. A few of my friends have been sending some really fun scavenger hunts to play while we're on Zoom. So we'll see if you guys are into that, interested in that by show of hands later on. Then we'll get into an education outreach program. This would have been something that we would have done in a live session with a game board and some pieces and really working together and collaboratively. So what we're going to be doing for this session is actually using our raise the hand function and feature. Later on throughout the activity, there will be some yes/no interactive questions that I'll have you raise your hand to answer yes or no. And so we'll kind of just see how that goes. After that, we will have a presentation from Ms. Marta Lugo, who will be talking about our safe, clean water efforts and measures. And then to close off, we'll have a small Q&A session, get your takeaways from how this evening went, and hopefully be able to wrap up around 7:30. So we will, try to make this a real tight 90-minute schedule because we know that this is a different format, and sitting in front of a computer for 90 minutes is, well, it's we'll see how it goes. How's that? So right now, I'm going to get into Miss Nina Hawk, actually, and she will, we're a little bit ahead of schedule. So she's going to go on and begin her presentation now.
Good evening, everybody. I am getting ready to share my screen and the presentation. Can everybody see the screen now?
Yes.
All right, beautiful.
Yes.
All right, we're rolling. So my name is Nina Hawk. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for the Water Utility Enterprise. It's one of 4 branches within the organization as a whole. And this branch specifically serves the utility function. So pretty much takes all the water from outside of county and the groundwater basins and moves that into county, manages the dams and reservoirs, and then moves that water around within the county to recharge our groundwater basins, and then after that go to treatment plants as well, and then also eventually make their way to a huge distribution pipeline system that then feeds into eventual pipes that then go to the cities and the retailers who then provide drinking water to our community. We do a number of functions, and so we're going to walk through those functions today in this PowerPoint and look forward to answering your questions at the end if you have them. So with that being said, we're excited to have you this evening, and we'll go ahead and begin. See if I can, and there we go. So what is our main purpose? Is to provide safe, reliable water to Santa Clara County now and for future generations. So we really pride ourselves on having a very unique history. We started off as a conservation district, just water conservation alone, and we eventually evolved to a groundwater management agency. Then eventually we realized we had a huge ag industry that was really prominent in Santa Clara County, known as the Valley of Heart's Delight. We eventually evolved into industrialized area and became Silicon Valley. And so we really worked hard to essentially make sure that we had sufficient water over the last century. And then eventually we evolved and we started to grow even more and had, of course, the watershed component, which is equally important to our ability to receive that water and be able to manage it for drinking water and purposes. So we have a whole other branch of the organization that also works on the watershed as well. But it is important to note that this is the one that works with that branch to make sure we deliver the safe, reliable water to you. So there is one unit specifically called the Water Utility Planning and Analysis Unit, and this is a newer unit, and we've strategically placed them in the watersheds area and then also in the water utility. And the idea here is to have a unit or a group of individuals reporting directly to myself that helps with just the overall strategic look at the organization. They come up with O&M plans related to how much we do, and O&M is operations and maintenance planning for all the different work we must do to maintain this infrastructure. They also look at what it takes to do technical training. So in order to actually maintain the treatment plants and operate them properly, we have to have a lot of certified technical staff that understands that, and we need to keep their expertise up to par. They even are certified by the state of California in order to do the job they do. So there's a lot that goes into that. They also work extensively with outside agencies. For example, we work a lot with the state as it relates to how we receive water from them. And one critical piece of infrastructure we work with them on is what's called the South Bay Aqueduct, which is a very large pipeline that delivers our treated water or imported water into the county. So that's just one example of an area that this unit focuses on. We also have a project management information system project in which we're taking on, and what this does is it takes our very large capital projects and it essentially converts the project itself and all the different documentation to manage the project into a software solution. So we're working on that and beginning that journey now, and we're very excited to move forward to apply that throughout the organization. So that's just a little bit about this specific area, the business and analysis area of the utility. So our capital division, and this is Heath McMahon, we just actually hired him. He's our new deputy operating officer. He comes from Southern California. He has many years working in both cities and water districts. And what he's responsible for is delivering that highly quality, innovative projects. And these projects are really unique because our capital projects and our rehabilitation that we do is not just let's go in and fix a pipe or let's go in and upgrade something. Because of the size of our infrastructure, we're a water wholesaler, which means we bring in so much water. It's for 2 million people every day. The entire county's drinking water comes from us, and we have to really make sure all that infrastructure stays functioning. So his job is to do all the major rehabilitation, which requires significant project oversight and management with various entities in order to achieve that. So that's one area that he works on. So a few of the groups within his area include our design and construction. There's some really great photos there to give you a sense of what some of our infrastructure looks like. So they work on, specifically, we have one unit that works on capital watershed projects, and they do flood protection and fish passage. That happens to be within the utility. We also have a unit that works on construction services. So it's just specialized inspectors and also engineers that are specialized in construction management alone. And they not only provide that service to the water utility, but also do it for our watersheds as well. And then the treatment plants delivery unit, we literally used to have our capital projects as by location or geographic location in the county. And in this past year, we decided to actually combine it as functions. So we have a treatment plants project delivery group. So capital projects that are led by a number of engineers, structural engineers, electrical engineers, and civil engineers and mechanical engineers leading these very complex projects. And then we also have the pipelines projects delivery, and they focus on all the major pipelines. And I'm talking big pipelines, anywhere from 42 to over 100 inches. So feet, big pipelines that you could actually, when we go to inspect them, we drain them and you can walk through these pipelines. They're rather large. So just a general sense of the size and complexity of those projects. Moving on, we have our raw water division, who's overseen by Aaron Baker, which is on this chart here. I apologize, there's a strange arrow on his head. He's our deputy operating officer there. He maintains and operates those 142 miles. That's a lot of pipes underground, and they're large diameter transmission pipelines. Once again, if they're big like that, they're considered transmission pipelines and not considered a distribution pipeline. A distribution pipeline is what you find in a smaller system that we deliver to, which would include your cities and who you basically get your bills from when you pay your water bill. So we supply the water to them. So this also includes 94 miles of raw water pipelines, and that means the water that comes into the county that hasn't been treated up to a drinking water standard. And then he also pushes that water to 3 major treatment plants. And there's 99 ponds used to recharge the groundwater basin. So not only is he pushing that water through the various pipelines and into creeks that then go to these 3 major drinking plants, but it also goes to ponds. And these ponds, they look beautiful. In fact, many people around the county don't even realize there's almost 400 acres surface-wise of these ponds throughout the county, and they look beautiful and aesthetic, but what they're really doing is serving the purpose of providing recharge. It's natural recharge that infiltrates into the ground and then seeps in and eventually recharges and provides additional water into the groundwater basin. We do have a number of both retailers, water agencies, and also private well owners that pump from that groundwater basin. And we are by law the designated groundwater manager. So we do our very best to keep that groundwater basin healthy. And that is a huge component of the work that his division does. And they also maximize that use of the water that we bring into county. And they take that water and they make sure it goes both to treated water, which is the drinking water side, and also the groundwater side. So they flexibly move it around. And then here's the 4 different divisions in his area, or 4 different units in his area. And these are groups of anywhere from, 12 people to 25 people. We have the utility maintenance engineering that specializes in inspecting those very large pipelines. We have the raw water operations, which is specialized certified staff that then goes and actually manually inspects it and moves the water and controls the water, moving it in and out of dams and into pump stations. And then we have the treatment plant maintenance, which actually services our treatment plants and also services the raw water side, which are all the different areas I just mentioned previously. And they also do preventative maintenance as well to make sure we get the longest life out of all of this large infrastructure as long as possible. So then we get the best value for that. And then of course they also have the pipeline and operations folks. And those are folks that are literally going out to those pipelines, turning valves, checking meters, making sure all the electrical and control systems are operating properly. And this includes telemetry and SCADA, et cetera. The next division we have, or group that we have, is the water supply division. And we actually have 2 folks that are part of that group, which includes Garth Hall, our deputy operating officer there. And we have had the great pleasure of having him come over from East Bay Mud. He used to work for another major large wholesale retail agency. And then also he worked for PG&E before that. So he has a really great background. And then Jerry De La Pierda, who has actually, he's an assistant operating officer who worked in at the district for many years and has worked his way into his role today. Both wonderful leaders, and that they have a very interesting group that takes the water and plans for the water, which is a very interesting group. And another way to look at this division is that they are essentially, when you look at cities and they do general plans and they have a planning department that looks at what are our needs out into the future. Well, that's what they do. And their focus is just looking at water specifically and planning for that and making sure we have enough of that for the entire county for several decades ahead. It's a big task, and there are 3 major divisions noted here. There's a couple more on the next slide. We have a group that just focuses on recycled water and purified water. And their core focus is to focus on the next innovative technology to take our water and allow it to not only be thoroughly treated and purified to the point that we can introduce it into those groundwater basins, and eventually we look to one day see if DPR, which is called direct potable reuse, eventually reintroducing it back into the treatment plants as well. So it's a very innovative group. They've been going for quite some time, and we're very proud of the work that they do and what they bring for the future. Then we have water supply planning and conservation. We have some people here today that are on this call, this video conference, and they're going to give you a great update of many of the programs and things that they do. But they look at long-term water supply planning. So they work with significant models as well, hydraulic models, to better understand what does climate change look like and how does that impact us, and believe it, it has a huge impact on the water cycle. And so they look at all those things. They also implement a number of conservation programs as well. And we also have groundwater monitoring and analysis. This is in the field, and this is also doing a lot of theoretical calculations and modeling as well. And then we have 2 more. One is the imported water unit, and their main charge is to work, since more than half of our water comes from outside of the county. They protect, they manage, and they develop imported water supplies. So they work closely with both the state and federal government to ensure that we have adequate supplies. And we're the only water agencies in the state of California that has both state and federal water. So we're highly unique. And really that was people before us, generations before us, that worked really hard to diversify the water portfolio was out of this unit. So we have them to thank for that diversity and kind of that thought to secure additional waters that we now enjoy today and provide to our entire county. Then we also have the Wells and Water Measurement Group, and this group really institutes the Water Ordinance Program. They look at the various wells and how they're operating, and they also look at metering as well. So they work on the technical aspects of how do we deliver water to the ground. Then we have our treated water division. This is managed by Bhavani Uraputu. She's our deputy operating officer. She manages 3 potable drinking water plants. She provides high quality drinking water to Santa Clara County. And in addition, she operates the Campbell Wellfield, which is a backup water treated water system that we have that can pull groundwater out in case we need it. And she also operates our 4th plant, which is the Silicon Valley Advanced Water Purification Center to advance the quality and use of recycled water within the county. The various divisions in her group include district-wide asset management, and this really is the holistic look at your assets. You're looking at the life of them, you're looking at the risk of them, and you're also looking at how do you properly maintain them on a sound cycle, but then also make for great investments. Then she also oversees water quality, which of course is integral to water. We cannot deliver this water or put it into use unless we know it meets several different very important drinking water standards and goes through many different processes, both before the treatment plants and after, and even in the reservoirs and the water that we receive from out of county. And we also have a lab services, which is the last one. Our laboratory services is renowned. They have, they are what's called ELAP certified by the state, and we have some of the most progressive abilities and technologies to test and evaluate the water for constituents. So we really have the cutting edge service in the laboratory that most agencies don't enjoy. And that actually gives us the ability to really be progressive when it comes to recycled water, to know that it's safe and that we can continue to deliver that and push the envelope in regards to innovation. So it's because of that lab we have that confidence. Then the treated plant process and commissioning is a newer unit that we put into place. And the purpose of this unit is to help with when we go to commission projects to make sure that they have a smooth transition from the capital side that was Heath earlier, those big capital projects that we do at the treatment plants, get commissioned and start up, and all the kind of innovation that goes into bringing a capital project to life needs to be done while a plant is running. And that is very difficult because we have to make sure we give you guys 24/7 service. So that unit focuses just on that. And then we also have a few more units, we're almost done. The utility electrical control systems that focuses on, and this is electrical engineers, controls engineers, a SCADA in particular, which is called the Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition System. Very, very important. Water utilities have this system in place in order to control how we flow water, and it's a highly secure network that allows us to push water safely and effectively through the system. We also have the North County Treatment Operations, and this literally are the folks that operate the treatment plants for the North County, and this includes 3 of the treated water plants, our pipelines, and then of course we supply San Jose Water Company, City of San Jose, and City of Milpitas from that operation. And then we have the South Water Treatment Plant Operations, which includes the other 7 treated water customers in the county for Santa Clara County. With that, I've completed the general overview of the water utility enterprise, and I stand by for any questions that anybody may have.
Are there any questions if you want to ask Nina directly, or type them in the chat box?
Hey, Mara, this is Rick. Would it be easier if you told the participants how to raise their hands so that we can then go through the questions, so rather than having to type long questions?
Yes, yes. Why don't we have people raise their hands?
Yeah, so for the water ambassadors, in order to raise your hands at the bottom of your screen, if you click on the middle of your screen, you'll see participants. If you click on that, it will then say raise hand on the right side. So, and I see you do have a couple hands raised. So hopefully someone can help facilitate that.
Mira's host. Where do I see?
So I see you have a hand raised from Laura. Maybe if you allow
My
Laura.
system just, oh, there we go. Roy Hayes. I see one from Roy Hayes. And Laura, Rick said Laura first. So
Yes,
Laura.
I was just reading down the list, just trying to.
Yeah, Laura. Laura.
I know that they have regulations in the works for the potable water reuse. How soon do you think that's going to be a possibility for our county?
That is such a great question. So as it stands right now, the potable reuse regulations are there so that water can be used for what's called purple pipe, which is essentially using recycled water for dual plumb facilities, for toilet flushing, for use in irrigation, for landscaping, etc. The other form right now that there currently are regulations in place is for indirect potable reuse. Many Southern California agencies are already instituting this, and what this is the introduction of that recycled water into the groundwater basin. There is no one really located within the Bay Area that has yet to do indirect potable reuse, even though the regulations are there. And the trend is such that Southern California really has incurred a lot more droughts, and so out of necessity, those agencies have been very progressive. However, our Silicon Valley Advanced Water Purification Center is really that next step for us to move forward and see about piloting and eventually doing indirect potable reuse. The new regulations, which is likely what you're speaking of, is for direct potable reuse, and that's taking that water and introducing it into pipelines and or into treatment plants for eventual treatment into the drinking water. Those regulations are slated, there's in a 3-year period, they anticipate there not only be a framework from the State Water Resources Control Board, but then there will also be some draft proposed regulations for evaluation. And there will be an expert panel that is put together to help formulate those regulations. And one of the top focuses of that, of course, is public health, since it is a very advanced way for us to take wastewater and introduce it into drinking water.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay,
No,
next.
Next hand raise. Let's see. Oh, it was Roy Hayes. Excuse me, Roy.
I was testing the system, that was all.
Oh, okay, okay.
Okay, lower hand. There we go.
Are there any other questions for Nina?
No, not at this time. It looks like.
Okay, can I do one? So you're saying because they have a lot more droughts in Southern California, but we're saying that also here, because of climate change, we're going to see less and less water. So is this a reason why this has been considered? I can't hear you.
Yeah, during the last drought,
Mhm.
sorry. So during the last drought, our board actually took a very aggressive action for us to advance purified water program. And that was because we started to see the impacts of drought to our region. And, you know, Southern California, as mentioned, has been more progressive just because they don't have the luxury of having as much of the local watersheds that we do. We have a lot of beautiful, you guys know, we have gorgeous mountains and streams and creeks that a lot of terrain that you don't see in Southern California. And so they're a little bit more arid in terms of their weather cycles down there, which prompted them to go a little bit more advanced quicker than we did up in Northern California. However, our board took the leadership role to advance that during the last drought, and that's what prompted the Silicon Valley Advanced Water Purification Center to be built. Mm-hmm. And you're absolutely right. Climate change is going to impact us in more ways than one, and we already see the effects of it happening, not just with the last drought, but even with those imported water. So we do bring water in from the state and federal side, which is from the Sierras and from all these large reservoirs, Shasta Reservoir, Oroville, which is great to be able to utilize Mother Nature's water and put it to good use. But we know the weather cycles, atmospheric rivers, and having longer droughts and more years in a drought are going to make water more scarce, and that's due to climate change. So it's really prudent for us to really push the envelope and look ahead at how else can we either develop or create a more resilient, dependable supply. And that's why the Purified Water Program is so important for Santa Clara County and others. We want to make sure we're well positioned and that the county is ready for when the time comes to provide adequate water to the community.
All right.
Very good.
Great. I saw that there was another question as well from Iris.
Yes, hello. My question is, so you talked about the state-of-the-art labs, and I was wondering, is it possible for people to see their water quality, or see the history of their water quality from these labs? And in connection with that, there's new water quality concerns, things that a few years ago nobody even knew about, things like endocrine disruptors and microplastics and all of these. So are they also being, tested for in the state-of-the-art facilities? Could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, that was a great question. So by law, all water agencies are required to provide all of their testing to the state, and the state does have all of that information public. To your very good question, though, there is a huge push by even people that sit on the State Water Resources Control Board to really think about how do we manage data better so we can make it more transparent. This is really technical information, and a lot of times just that raw data doesn't tell the full story about what does it mean. What does so many milligrams or milliliters of X, Y, and Z mean to the human body or to an individual? And so it's hard for the consumer to translate that information. So there is a lot of push amongst the water industry to find out, is there a better way that we can synthesize that information and share that? Now, we do our very best as a water wholesaler and agency to publicize and provide everything from FAQs to information on our website about the water and what's in it. Especially, as you mentioned, there's a lot of really interesting things that we are learning about what's in the water today, and there's new technology that it's allowing us to better understand what's in that water, and now we can actually start to measure what's in that water. Microplastics, CECs, which are constituents of emerging concerns, pharmaceuticals, etc., all very hot topics. Our lab specifically is working right now to get some of the major certifications for those types of constituents that are kind of cutting edge, the ones that we're just learning about that are of concern to our community. And believe it or not, the state doesn't even have a process for the certification because it's so new. So we're actually forging some of the new ground with the state to get those approvals because we're able to demonstrate that through our technical expertise and the equipment that we have on site in the lab. So it's really a testament to kind of the group and the team as a whole, the chemists and the biologists that work there, really pushing the envelope as it relates to keeping the best available technology and pushing that envelope to get that information. So I would say there's absolutely room for improvement on this front, but we always do our very best. And we actually work very closely with the communications team in providing a lot of this information in a translatable, digestible way to the public, because it is hard for people the common person to just pick up that information and read it. Otherwise it might not mean much to them.
So if a person wanted to get, the milligrams per liter or the micrograms, where would they go?
So we don't have, like I mentioned before, there isn't like a core location. We all submit it to the state, but we don't, as agencies, all have it listed on a given website or even our own, because it is such a tranche of information. But we're happy to share that information. So we get general public inquiries, and we can certainly share what we see and what we have in the water, no problem. So it's not, we get inquiries all the time, different things that people are curious about and they want to know, and we take those calls, and our water quality staff, work with people and provide them whatever information they're curious about. So.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Mara?
All right. I know that Mara said she was having trouble with the connection. Yeah. So I'll just jump in here. It looks like we had a question from Agnes, or did we just? Oh,
Iris hit. I think Iris' hand, and then Agnes, and then Laura.
All right. Thank you, Matthew.
Yeah.
Hi. Rick.
So Iris, are you able to?
I just asked my question, right?
I think it's Agnes' turn.
Oh, Agnes, sorry, excuse me.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Agnes.
I had to unmute myself again. But
yeah, you're good. Let me just lower your hand, Iris. There we go. Okay, Agnes. Just press the unmute button.
Okay. So is the Water Supply Division responsible for looking at how we currently store our water in our current systems in regard to reservoirs that we know a lot of water evaporates from? Is that the area responsible or group responsible for that?
They do more the holistic planning. So the group that actually monitors the reservoirs and where they're at and the levels is actually the Raw Water Division. So that was Aaron. So he oversees the operations of those dams and reservoirs and moving that water into the various creeks, et cetera, and into our water system.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Okay, can I go now? In terms of the CECs, I've been hearing a lot of coming PFAS regulations.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know anything about that, or when those are going to become, are they going to begin becoming regulated?
Yeah, it is one of the hot topics that we just mentioned earlier. So PFAS is something that recently they've decided to put trigger levels, notification levels on the groundwater basin and what we might see in terms of PFAS in the groundwater basins. As it stands right now, we're a water wholesaler, so we don't pull the water out of the ground and pump it out and deliver it to people. The retailers do. So the retailers are the ones that are going to have to comply with any new regulations associated with a PFAS specifically, because that's typically how you pull it out of the groundwater basins and then it would be utilized. As it stands today, though, we have a very progressive group. Our groundwater monitoring group is actually putting together a monitoring plan. So even though we don't deliver from the groundwater basin to the customers directly, that's done by others, we are a steward of that groundwater basin. And so we want to better understand, even if the regulatory agencies don't hold us accountable, we want to monitor and begin to look at anything we're seeing in that groundwater basin and work with our retailers to share that information and make sure they are well poised to understand how to comply and make sure that the water in fact meets the new standards that are forthcoming. And they're under development right now, so it's not too clear. They have trigger levels and notification levels, but they haven't really, they're still formulating how they're going to enforce or what additional actions will need to be taken by the retailers when they go to pump that water out. So some of them are electing to take groundwater wells offline right now until we figure out what the regulators are going to want, what that treatment might look like, et cetera. So it's kind of a new, getting back to the question that Iris raised, it's a new area where we've learned about it in the groundwater basin and want to make sure that we understand it better. So definitely more to come on that front, but that's where it's at from our perspective right now.
So the retailers, are they going to regulate other industries like the industrial industry who may accidentally?
Great question. So one of the things that I would say is a challenge for our industry is we worked really hard to make the water clean and safe to drink, but how things get introduced to that water is not something we have control over. So we will definitely do anything as we begin to understand something like PFAS or other things. We'll definitely work with those regulators to really figure out that cradle to grave response. From there, where do you go? So, but yeah, so we're going to work closely with those regulators to find out, will they take some other actions with those that actually introduce those? It is challenging. So, but it's not our area and it's not their area or the retailer's responsibility. It'll be something we have to see as we go along, if there'll be additional regulations on producers of pollutants, et cetera.
Okay, we're going to move to the next speaker. So sorry about the delay, the great questions, and it is a different environment, rich information for learning and captured on video, but we are going to move on to the next speaker to recapture some of the agenda here. So I'm going to introduce Karen Coppett and Samantha Green from the Water Supply Planning and Conservation Unit. Karen Coppett is a Senior Water Conservation Specialist. And Samantha Green is a Senior Water Resource Specialist. So they'll be talking about water supply planning and conservation efforts. So I'm going to first turn it over to Samantha Green. Great, Samantha's already sharing her screen, so she'll be able to present her presentation. I'll be able to mute myself here.
Okay. Thank you for inviting me to present on water supply planning. So in water supply planning, one of our major tasks is to ensure that we have a reliable water supply for our nearly 2 million residents in Santa Clara County, both now and into the future. And these residents, they cover 15 different cities as well as the areas outside of those cities, and they're serviced by 13 water retailers, or many, 4,700 approximately, have their own wells that we make sure there's water running in their wells, and that the water retailers have supplies that they can give their customers. We have a long history of ensuring water supply reliability within the county. So back in the early 1900s, we started to have an expansion of agriculture. And what we noticed was people were pumping water a lot faster than the natural groundwater was able to recharge through precipitation. And so in response, we started to build out our local reservoir system. And so we now have 10 different reservoirs throughout the county that help us manage our local water sources, surface water sources. However, in the mid-1900s, there was accelerated population growth and urbanization within Santa Clara County. You can see that through the green line right here. And this caused us to further invest in new water supplies. And so what we did was we entered into contracts with imported water, the State Water Project and the Federal Water Project. And this really helped us regain a lot of our groundwater storage and stop the subsidence from occurring. And so you can see on this graphic, the brown is the land surface subsidence that occurs, and it says there was 13 feet of subsidence. So the land surface dropped 13 feet in San Jose between 1915 and 1970. And so what we want to do is continue keeping our groundwater full while meeting our water demands within the county so that we prevent this subsidence from happening again in the future. And so the way we do that is through a 3-step planning process. And so we first assess our needs and goals. So what are going to be our water demands? Then number 2, we figure out how can we meet those demands. So we develop scenarios. And then the last step is based on those scenarios and stakeholder feedback, creating a plan, investing in that plan, and monitoring it for changes. So assessing needs and goals. A needs is what we're projecting we are going to need to meet the demands in the future. So how much water supply will the county require in the future? Is it going to be a little bit, or is it going to be a lot of it? And there's a lot of things that can affect that. Climate change, for example, can affect that. It can, for example, increase landscape demands and population change as well. That's the technical aspect. But as you're going to notice as I go through this presentation, a lot of water supply planning has a technical aspect and a policy aspect. And so tied to that technical aspect of what are the demands in the county, there's also the idea of what is our goals of meeting those demands. And so what our board has decided is that our board of directors is that in normal years, so non-drought years, they definitely want to meet 100% of demands. And so they don't want to have to ask for any short-term water use reductions. However, in extreme cases like severe droughts, such as the one we most recently experienced in 2012 to 2016, their level of service goal is they're hoping not to have to, their goal is to not request more than 20% short-term water use reductions. So in the most recent drought, it went up to 30%, but we're now planning to hope to aim to not go above 20, asking for more than 20% short-term water use reductions. So in that planning, what we have found is that our largest challenge is going to be the drought years. So in average years, we tend to have little to no shortfall, and we definitely will plan to ensure that in those normal water conditions, we can meet 100% of demands. However, in drought years, that's where we see our biggest gap between supplies and demands. That's when our reservoirs start getting lower, imported water starts reducing. And so what a lot of our planning aims to do is figure out how do we shrink that gap during drought years and get those drought resilient supplies. To look into that, we then start developing scenarios with different projects that can close that gap. And so this again has that technical aspect as well as the policy aspect. And the technical aspect is looking at how new projects will fit into our large and diverse water supply system that Nina did a really great job talking about. We have hundreds of acres of recharge ponds, hundreds of miles of pipelines, surface water, groundwater supplies, and we bring water in from outside of county. And so any project we look at, we want it to work efficiently and effectively within our existing system or help optimize the system. Then there's the policy aspect. And so there's usually many projects that can work within our water supply system and achieve our level of service goal. And so choosing which projects are the best for our county, we rely on stakeholder engagement and board direction. And examples of board direction could be reducing costs, which then reduces our water rates, diversifying our supply portfolios to increase resiliency, or reducing our reliance on the Delta and increasing our local supplies. Then once we have our projects and some board direction, we put together different scenarios and put it into our model. And so our model is called the Water Evaluation and Planning Model, WEEP for short. And it portrays all of those pipelines, all of our reservoirs, all of our recharge ponds, everything is in there. It's basically a complex bank accounting model that looks at future conditions and how we can operate and how will those projects help us meet future demands based on all of the operational rules and constraints we may have in the future. The next step, once we've looked at different scenarios for meeting our demands, is to develop a plan, invest in that plan, and monitor. And so we've looked at different projects and how it fits into that larger model. And the next step is putting it together into a single strategy. And so to do that, we work with a bunch of different committees. Stakeholders will hold one-on-one meetings if requested. And we also interact significantly with our board of directors to get their feedback on the projects and investment strategies that they think will work the best for the future. The board has recently adopted a new water supply master plan that looks out to secure supplies out to 2040. They adopted it in November 2019, and within it has a three-pronged strategy. The first prong is to secure existing supplies and infrastructure. The second is to expand conservation and reuse. And the final prong is to optimize the system. And so this really, this three-pronged strategy helps us minimize impacts on rates by maximizing our existing infrastructure and system, but helps us become more resilient to future conditions by maximizing our local supplies through conservation and reuse. And through optimizing the system, we can be sure that in all different conditions, we're able to move our water around the county to the places that need it. However, with all potential projects, there's always going to be uncertainties. This is modeling and it's projecting what things will look like in the future. And so some uncertainties we look into include climate change. We look at a ton of different scenarios based on different climate models that were provided. We also look at different water demand futures. Then there's unknowns with regulation, as well as even with what projects will continue to exist into the future. And so with that, it's important to always be monitoring your plans and assessing to see how needs and goals and those scenarios may be changing and adjusting your plans as needed. And so with that, I will pass it off over to Karen to talk about water conservation.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Sam. That's great. I will share my screen and all right, hopefully my screen will pop up. And
as she's getting her screen ready, I'll just introduce Karen. Karen Coffett is a senior water conservation specialist, again with the water supply planning and conservation unit.
Sam, can you unshare your screen?
Matt, did you want to take questions first for
Oh, yeah.
the last presentation?
Well, they were kind of joined together. Did you want your question, would you like your Q&A period to be individual, or would you like us to group you together at the end?
Group together at the end, right? Right, Sam?
Yes, group
Sounds
together
good.
at the end is good.
Sounds good. Okay, we'll moderate that in just a little bit.
Great. All right, terrific. I think I'm all set. Thanks, everybody. I'll try to keep it real brief, and hopefully my cat will not jump up and get into the frame. My name is Karen Coppett. I'm a senior water conservation specialist at Valley Water. I've been here now for about 22 years. I wanted to talk a little bit, build on what Sam said about water demands in Santa Clara County. It's kind of interesting if you look at the pie chart of water demands in our county. 55% go to residential use, 31% go to business use. Dedicated meter landscape is 6%, and that's things like parks. And agriculture is 8%, and that's mainly in South County. So why is water conservation important? You probably all know these on some level already. Increases long-term water supply reliability, assists in meeting short-term demands, such as when we have a drought. Reduces reliance on delta water supplies, imported water, saves energy, reduces greenhouse gas emissions, and reduces urban runoff. That picture on the right-hand side is San Luis Reservoir. That's a water intake valve. As you can see, it's during a drought and it's not anywhere near the water. Fortunately, the Santa Clara Valley Water District is here to help. We have a lot of programs, and I can walk you through those. We have residential programs, landscape programs, commercial, industrial, and institutional programs. We have programs for farmers. We have outreach and education, and plenty of tools and videos on our website. First, I want to talk about the programs that we have for residents. In fact, one of the cool things that you can do right now is you can get a do-it-yourself indoor survey kit. If you request that on our website, we will send it out to you by mail during this period of shelter in place. It's kind of a great little activity. You can go through your house and you can measure your water use, and you can see if you have low flow fixtures. If you find that you don't have low flow fixtures like shower heads, aerators, and toilet flappers, you can let us know and we will send them to you at no cost at all. Eventually, when we go back to normal, we do have a WaterWise outdoor survey program, another program at no cost to you. Our surveyors will come to your houses and they will look at your irrigation and they will figure out whether it's efficient or not and give you suggestions for improving the efficiency. We also have a gray water rebate program. It's sort of a laundry landscape program. And we have our amazing landscape rebate program that I will talk about. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the WaterWise survey program. This is the indoor one. Again, we'll send you a do-it-yourself kit. It has a plastic flow rate bag. It has toilet leak detection tablets. It has a booklet and instructions. We even have how-to videos online in different languages. So it's pretty amazing and a lot of people like it. So do check that out on our website. We have the outdoor survey program where our inspectors will come to your home by appointment and evaluate your irrigation system, which is amazing. We have, as I mentioned, our gray water laundry to landscape rebate program, and that's hooking up your rinse water from your clothes washer and having it go down to water your plants. It's an amazing program. Our landscape rebate program is for both residential and commercial sites in Santa Clara County. We have a program where we can pay for you to take out your high water using landscape and put in water smart landscape, such as water efficient plants and permeable hardscape. And in certain areas, the rebate is $2 per square foot, such as in Palo Alto, Morgan Hill, Cupertino, and if you're a San Jose Muni customer. And again, it's open for residents and businesses. We have all kinds of equipment. I won't go through it all for landscape equipment, irrigation equipment upgrades, such as high efficiency nozzles, rain sensors, weather-based irrigation controllers, all kinds of things. It's all on our website. We also have, and I'm really excited about this, especially because it's been raining, we have rainwater capture rebates, and that includes rain barrels, cisterns, and rain gardens. I really encourage everybody to take advantage of these. One nice thing about rain barrels and cisterns is that they can provide an additional water supply if you should need it, which is really nice. For businesses, we have lots of other programs. We have a sub-meter rebate program that's basically encouraging a condominium complex that has 1 meter to go to individual sub-meters. We also have custom measured rebates for retrofitting equipment in businesses. It's our WET program, Water Efficient Technologies program. We give out free pre-rinse spray valves. That's what you see there. Oops, that's what you see there in that picture. We also give out aerators to businesses as well. And it's kind of fantastic. I'm going to skip forward a little bit because I know we're running a little short of time and I want to cover the last few slides. We have a water waste inspector program where if you see somebody, if you happen to go past a park, say, and you can see a busted sprinkler head shooting up fountains, I see that all the time actually, you can report it, and we will provide education and resources to help residents, but not just residents, businesses also, help them to reduce water use and eliminate water waste. It's not a water cops program. It's basically educational, and it's a resource to help people. Sometimes people don't even know that they have a irrigation sprinkler that has popped off because sometimes they have it programmed to run at 5 in the morning. So they don't know, and other people can go by and see it, and this helps people. So we have a lot of different ways to report water waste. We also have lots of events. We go out into the community and do lots of events to help educate people. We have a summer outreach campaign, which should be coming soon. We provide workshops for homeowners and landscape professionals. We have lots of literature, and you can find everything on our Valley Water's website, valleywater.org. And that's it for me. So maybe Sam and I can both take questions.
We have one hand up right now, Iris.
Yeah, I have a question regarding the different scenarios that you talked about in the first presentation. So, with SIGMA, the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, there is a lot more emphasis on basically staying within your watershed. And I was wondering if one of your scenarios also considers what would need to happen that we would stay within our watershed, because all the water that we're importing, it's really beneficial for us, but it's taking away water from somewhere else, right? And compared to other places in the world, we still have a relatively high per capita use of water. So is there some effort to think about what sustainability could mean within our watersheds here?
Yes, so we do have a very carefully managed groundwater basin here. So with SIGMA, actually, we had our alternative plans for both of our major subbasins approved. And we use our local supplies to help manage our groundwater basin. And it is supplemented with imported supplies. And those imported supplies are through contracts where part of those contracts, we do help maintain both that imported water system and the watersheds around that we obtain our supplies from. So we do help with restoration and mitigation projects through those funds. As far as self-sustainability goes, we do run many scenarios that aim to look at increasing our local supplies, and many of those have been board approved for planning. So we have a lot of conservation projects and programs that are being developed that Karen could definitely talk more about. but we also have the reuse program, the potable reuse that Nina talked a bit about in her presentation as well. And so both of those really help us decrease our reliance on the Delta and increase our local resiliency.
Great. We have a we have a written question here for Karen. Do you see that question? I'll read it. The first pie chart showed you supply 31% business and 55% residential. How does that compare to the rest of the state?
Yeah, that's a great question. The makeup of every county, of course, is different. Some counties are purely residential. Some counties have a lot more business. Some counties have a lot more agriculture. So it's hard to compare. That just happens to be the makeup for our county. I think that one of the more interesting questions is how does our gallons per capita water use compare to the rest of the state? And actually, I'd like to address that really quickly. I'm really proud of the people in Santa Clara County because they really rose to the occasion during the drought. We had, I can't even remember what it got up to, but it was something like 24%, maybe higher than that, water savings over what we were using in 2013, which is considered to be a baseline year before the drought really got going. And people in Santa Clara County have really kept that up. We are still at around 20% using less water than we were in 2013. And so I think that means that people take it seriously. They want to be very efficient in their water use. And we have a long ways to go, but I think we're doing great.
Great. Thank you very much for that presentation. I'm going to introduce Rick Callender, who's going to introduce one of our board members.
Actually, not introduce our board member, but before I go there, I saw another question that just came in from Brooke. Matthew, do we have time for another question? Or actually, that was just saying that we would get back to folks. Okay, so let me go. So we do have Director Richard Santos. He is on the line. He was just having trouble unmuting himself. As we all get used to new technology. He did call in by phone. He wanted me to just pass along that he appreciates all of your commitment. He appreciates all of you calling in, especially during this troubling times that we have. But he wanted me basically to pass along his great appreciation for your participation tonight. I wanted to let you know that he is listening in. He is his number is one of the phone calls I was in. That he is definitely participating and will be participating. And thanks you for being here.
Thank you, Rick. I'll take that question and send it for a response, so we'll email to that question. We're going to take a 5-minute break to allow people to regroup, get a drink of water if they like, and then we're going to come back for Marta Lugo's presentation about the Safe Clean Water and Natural Flood Protection Program.
I can't keep a connection. So I apologize for that. I'm listening in on the line. And so we will be moving our agenda along to Marta Lugo. I apologize for the technical difficulty this evening. So thank you for being flexible. Thank you for staying on the line with us. And I want to thank both Nina and Samantha and Karen and Director Santos for joining us and being with us earlier today. So thank you for that. And then you will continue to see some wonderful presentations from Marta Lugo next about safe, clean water. So thank you for staying tuned in with us. We had planned to have some wonderful jazz music playing at this time. So next session, when we meet up again, we'll make sure to move through these technical difficulties and make sure to provide you an even more enriching and engaging experience. So thank you again.
Thank you very much as well. So we'll start at 7 o'clock. We'll 2 more minutes, just to give everyone a heads up, about 2 more minutes. All righty, I think here it's gonna ping in just a minute. All right, so I'm going to introduce Marta Lugo, who is an assistant officer with the External Affairs Division at Valley Water, to talk about the Safe Clean Water and Natural Flood Protection Program. Take it away, Marta.
All right, thank you, Matthew. Good evening, Water Ambassadors. I'm Marta Lugo, Assistant Officer under the External Affairs Division, and it's really my pleasure to be here with you all this evening during these extraordinary times. First, I want to start off by acknowledging what's going on in the world right now with the COVID-19, and to reassure the group that Valley Water is committed to maintaining a high level of service as Santa Clara County responds to COVID-19. We will continue to provide reliable supply of safe, clean water, drinking water to residents and businesses in Santa Clara County as an essential public service. And so with that, I would like to start with our presentation, which is at the start of December 10th, at our December 10th board meeting. Our board of directors provided direction to staff to embark on an exploratory process to examine opportunities to really enhance and update the existing Safe Clean Water and Natural Flood Protection Program, which is funded through a special parcel tax passed by voters in November of 2012. Staff has been tasked with spearheading an agency-wide effort, both internally and externally, to explore the feasibility of developing a potential renewal of the Safe Clean Water and Natural Flood Protection Program and future funding measures. As part of this exploratory stage in the process, staff is reaching out to stakeholders such as this group to inform you of our efforts, to answer your questions, as well as receive any input and feedback into this program, because this really is a community preferred program that we're trying to explore and realign. We want to make sure that it meets the needs of the community. The information that we gather collectively will be shared with our board later this spring as part of a draft community preferred plan, further consideration on whether or not to move forward with this initiative later this summer. So I will continue with talking about kind of why now and what's going on in terms of what we're facing. So as a community faces serious public health challenges, it is essential that Valley Water continues to provide safe, clean water and natural flood protection for all. Valley Water plays a vital role as part of the greater public infrastructure system, and providing reliable drinking water supplies during emergencies such as this is one of our top priorities. In the face of new challenges due to climate change, population and economic growth, and future uncertainties with our imported water supplies, as well as delays in regulatory permitting or restrictions, it is critical for Valley Water to take another closer look at this existing program to, one, better plan out our water resources and flood protection systems to help meet the future challenges of tomorrow. Other factors also include aging infrastructure and ongoing maintenance and operations for large capital projects and mitigation costs that were not fully accounted for nearly a decade ago. In addition, we have increasing demands for services while at the same time not having funding available for things such as increased homeless encampments and cleanups. I'd also like to, I'm sorry, I meant to go back here one slide. I think I skipped one. See if I can go back. Also cover that in addition, we also have encountered other several challenges in securing federal funding for our community preferred enhanced level projects. So this is really more of the enhanced level or flood protection projects. And although we plan to meet the locally funded projects as set out in the program, we are also trying to accommodate really the community preferred options by finding solutions to bridge that gap. And of course, with the upcoming presidential election, now might be a good opportune time to realign the program by being proactive in our efforts to replace the current program before it expires if the board decides to move in that direction. Further, a renewed and enhanced program would enable us to provide a more reliable water supply for the future by improving water supplies, upgrading our aging infrastructure to better plan and prepare for emergencies, for droughts, for natural disasters, as well as provide more enhanced flood protection projects in response to extreme weather and climate change. So staff really is looking at how do we extend our existing funding levels beyond 2028 to keep the program going and explore new opportunities to really enhance the program while addressing additional needs to be better equipped to manage new challenges since the inception of this program. So how are we going to get there? We are embarking on stakeholder engagement. So we have been giving presentations such as this one to our board advisory committees, to different commissions and committees, to stakeholder groups, as well as planning larger forums such as a Blue Table Forum that we have upcoming for April, and community meetings. This is one of the presentations of one of many that we're embarking on in order to collect input. And the whole goal is really to collect input from the community to see what resonates, what does the community want to see in a potential new program. As part of that, it also includes community engagement, so public participation to gather input, which includes a community input survey that we put together asking questions on kind of the existing program priorities and what the community feels in terms of what they feel are the top priorities. We also have speaker bureau presentations that we plan to roll out, although they will be virtual given the situation that we're under today, but we're doing our best to adapt and shift in today's times to be able to do as much community outreach as possible in this effort. So in terms of the timeline, as I explained earlier at the start of the presentation, right now we're really in the exploratory phase. We're really investigating the feasibility of whether this makes sense, and then we'll be sharing that information back as part of a draft community preferred plan to the board later this summer. So our exploratory phase is really between January and June. We'll be providing updates on the information that is gathered to the board. We did have one scheduled for March, but that may be pushed out to April, but then also another update in May with more of that information gathered, and then the presentation in June of this community draft plan, and then hopefully a decision in July where the board will decide whether or not to place this on the ballot. In terms of program development, there are currently 5 different priorities, which are here. The first one is ensure a safe, reliable water supply. The second is reduce toxins, hazards, and contaminants in our waterways. The third is protect our water supply from earthquakes and natural disasters. The fourth is to restore wildlife habitat and provide open space. And the fifth is to provide flood protection to homes, schools, and highways. In addition, we're also looking at additional priorities to account for things such as climate change and also public safety and public health. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment, but I do want to share some of our internal stakeholder input that we've embarked on since beginning this process. We have had some internal brainstorming sessions on the current existing priorities to really look at, what projects have really worked well, what have been the challenges, do we need to update the descriptions, our key performance indicators, which at the moment, they're all on track. All of our, locally funded projects are all on track. But again, we're looking at how to bridge the gap with some of those more enhanced community preferred projects. Some of the key takeaways from some of these brainstorming sessions that we've held so far include some key consideration and themes in terms of addressing increasing demand for operation and maintenance. We all know as we build new big projects, we need to maintain them. So it's not just about building new projects, but also accounting for the long haul. Just like when we buy a new car, we need to account for the gas, for the brakes, for the tune-ups, and so accounting for all of the operations and maintenance for all of these larger capital projects. Also the mitigation needs in terms of what that entails. Other areas that are improving or providing improved infrastructure reliability, integrating climate change adaptation strategies as we encounter and face more extreme weather patterns, droughts, more catastrophic flooding. So we need to account and update our plans to address all of those challenges. Also streamlining and improving our grant program is another area where we'll be focusing on. And in addition, providing for continued public safety near creeks due to increased homeless encampment, as well as looking at our public health and public safety in terms of some of our projects and how to deliver that. This right here is the actual community input survey. I encourage all of you to go to our microsite, which is safecleanwater.org, where you can click on here on our Survey Monkey. Let's see if this will pull up the actual page, but here it is. You go to surveymonkey.r Safe Clean Water. We'll also be sending out the link after the meeting so you guys could take this survey. We really encourage you to take the survey and let your voice be heard. Just ask basically the questions on which priorities you feel are important. And we also encourage obviously for this to be shared widely with your networks as well. We really want to encourage as much of the community to participate in this process, because this is a community participation process. As part of that, we've also developed several videos promoting the community survey. So we have videos in English, we have videos in Spanish, Vietnamese, Chinese, really to encourage the public, to fill out the survey. I hope that this link here works, but we do have here when I showcase the video.
How important is safe, clean water and natural flood protection for you?
Es muy importante para mí que el agua que fluye por nuestra comunidad esté libre de toxinas y contaminantes.
Tôi muốn cộng đồng chúng tôi được bảo vệ trước lũ lụt.
我要确保我们的水源时刻处于安全状态，以防患于未然。
What matters most to you? Take 2 minutes to fill out the survey and be heard. And let's work together to keep safe, clean water and natural flood protection for all.
All right, so I'm glad that worked. right, moving on. We also have, this information on our social media pages, on our Facebook, Twitter, Nextdoor, and on our microsite. Like I mentioned, it's a Safe Clean Water .org site where you guys can go and get more information. I also encourage, as many of you as possible to also share this on your own social media networks in order to basically really get the voice of the community as part of this effort. In terms of next steps, we are continuing to research and evaluate options. We're going to continue to push out the community and stakeholder outreach to get as much input into the process as possible. We will also continue working on further developing the program development and refining those priorities and projects, and as well as updating our board regularly. And then ultimately, this will all feed into developing a draft community preferred plan for the board for their final consideration. So with that, I will leave it now open to questions. I'm going to see if I can stop the screen share so that I could see all of your lovely faces and answer your questions.
Perfect. Okay, we have our first question from Laura, who's raised her hand. Laura?
Hi. So as far as funding goes, do you get state or federal funding? And with this new, with President Trump, who's kind of anti-environment, has there been difficulty getting federal funding if you do get it?
Yes, that's an excellent question, and I think that's why we're taking a look at this program. So we do try as much as possible to go after state and federal funding. And some of these larger projects, it has been difficult to secure the federal funding needed, so, which is why we're going back out and looking at this program and how we can realign and find other ways for funding through the Safe Clean Water program.
Marta, can I add on
Sure.
a little bit to that? Because I think that's such a critical and such an excellent question. We have a lot of flood protection projects, a lot of water supply projects that we do look for federal funding. That's one of the things that we try to do to not only lessen the amount of dollars that local taxpayers are giving to us, but trying to also show about the benefit for what we're doing locally and how it impacts the federal government. So we have recently received quite a bit of money for some of our projects. For example, we got over 177 million, excuse me, for the shoreline effort. So that's for flood protection there. We just got 1.5 million for Upper Guadalupe project in the last budget that came in. And so that's something that we're going to continue to push for. But the bottom line is it's not guaranteed funding. These are things that we promise the voters, hey, we're going to try to account for this and we're going to try to get these dollars in to make sure that we can stretch our local dollars as far as we can. But it's been a challenge. It's not only been under Trump's administration, but it's been under Obama, Bush's administration, et cetera, because we're competing amongst everyone in the nation. Now, going back to Trump's well-known position on the environment, in terms of where he are, that's had some, the way that I describe it, had some positives as well as some negative benefits to us. In terms of the negative benefits, obviously, in terms of the position of the Santa Clara Valley Water District, we're a very environmentally friendly organization. So we don't often line up where his administration is going. However, he has done some things that have been positive in saying, okay, sometimes we have these environmental organizations or the regulatory organizations. One regulatory organization says, we want you to go this way. And one regulatory organization says, we want you to go that way. The one thing he's tried to do is pull them together to say, let's try to find a way to make sure it makes sense for the agency that's asking for the permit. So in terms of speaking to a positive, I guess that's a positive thing, but it has been a challenge in trying to align what we do with where his administration is going. So it's a much longer answer, but it's a very good question.
Thank you.
Yes, very excellent question. Thank you.
I'll mute myself there. We have another hand raised by Agnes.
Yes, my question has to do with the Anderson Reservoir. What are we doing regarding the infrastructure problems about that area?
I'm going to punt this one actually over back to Rick because he's the expert on this area.
I was like, oh no, is that coming back to me? Okay. So Anderson Reservoir, I'm sure everybody saw it before coronavirus was in the news. Anderson Reservoir was probably the largest infrastructure project in the national news. We have not received any kind of national news coverage like we have over Anderson Reservoir. We are actively working on, in fact, I'm supposed to have been in DC, not next week, but the following week, in dealing with the regulators in order to move this thing forward. We did have, I'm trying to figure out, did everyone meet before the news broke out on this? Matthew, maybe you can remind me, or someone can remind me.
It was just starting to, it was just starting to come to the United States, but it was way more a international problem at that time.
No, I'm saying for the Anderson Reservoir. So
sorry, excuse me.
Had FERC asked us to empty the reservoir before the last session?
Yes, we talked about it during that last session.
Yeah. So you're well aware of what occurred. So what we're doing is we're trying to, in fact, I was in a closed session meeting of our board of directors today. This is their number one priority. The one thing that we want to do is be able to find a way to make sure that we can not only rebuild the reservoir, but also find a way to make sure that we have the protections to let the water out of the reservoir as quickly as possible. So we are fully committed to rebuilding and to moving this project along as quickly as possible. The meetings that I was supposed to have, we're working on right now to do meetings just like this with the folks back in Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. is not good on technology, unfortunately, so we're trying to figure out how this is going to work. So I don't know if that exactly answers your question, but we are fully committed. We're going to do everything that we can to move this Anderson Reservoir project along, and we're fully committed to the health and safety of this community.
Thank you.
Can I do one more?
Does anyone have, Laura has one more. Okay, go ahead, Laura, sorry about that.
Just really quick. So I was doing this Take Back the Tap program at school, and there was a lot of people who complained about the water taste. Do you get any of those kinds of complaints when you do the community outreach? And perhaps will there be like maybe water rebates for water filtration systems or like Brita filters or something in the future?
Yes, great question. So I can answer part of these questions. I'm sure there's others that can chime in as well. But yes, in terms of the water quality, we actually do very rigorous testing in terms of the water quality. So the water is absolutely completely safe in terms of drinking. Of course, everybody's different home system, depends on their pipes. It just, the taste, is different, varying on the different household types. And in terms of rebates, I do know that we're looking for this program into expanding water conservation rebates. That's something that we're looking at, potentially exploring under the Safe Clean Water program. And I'm sure in terms of the current rebate, if Karen's still on here, she can also address and provide more information on the current rebates that we have. But we are definitely looking at exploring and expanding that under the Safe Clean Water program as a potential priority.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We have a question from Roy. Oh, you got to unmute yourself, Roy, I think. Yeah. Oh, I can unmute you. There you go.
There, can you hear me now?
Yes, Roy.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, sorry.
No, you're good.
The reservoir that's planned to go in Pacheco Pass is to expand the one that's in Pacheco Pass. That's this side of San Luis Reservoir. How does that fit in with the plans for Anderson? Wouldn't it make sense to get that one done before you retrofitted Anderson?
In terms of the Pacheco project, that's a new project, and that's going to take some time in terms of getting it, all the planning, the design. So it takes a lot of permitting. So there's a lot of work that goes in beforehand in terms of putting together. But it is a very important part of our water supply portfolio that we're definitely pursuing in terms of providing reliable drinking water supplies, especially during emergencies, and also environmental benefits for fish and habitat. So this is definitely a project that we're looking at very much in terms of it, also under the Safe Clean Water and Natural Flood Protection Project. And I don't know if anybody else here, subject matter experts, have any other points to add to that answer, but that's my quick answer in a nutshell.
I wanted to ask if Nina is still on the line, because I think this is something that's definitely a utility. Hopefully she's still, I see she's still here, but she may have been taking care of our family, as we all know. We're trying to balance everything here. But in terms of, Roy, in terms of what you're looking at, obviously, Pacheco is going to be much larger than Anderson, and we'll be able to fit all of our reservoirs inside of Pacheco Plus in order to move this along. But the time frame in order to fix Anderson is lesser than that of that to build Pacheco. But here's the thing: we need to do both of these projects. We need to successfully find a path for both of these projects. The amount of water that we need for Silicon Valley and the amount of security that we need for our water in Silicon Valley requires us to figure it out for everything. Are we going to be able to find a path for Anderson? I truly hope so. I don't know. Are we going to be able to get excuse me, Pacheco built? I think we will be able to definitely do that. I think it looks positive. But hopefully, if we're able to find a path to bring safe, clean water to the voters, and the voters understand that if we can control our own water supply, that's the best option that we have. Let's build all of our reservoirs within Silicon Valley and be able to make it work. And so hopefully we'll find a path, but I don't think we can do Pacheco before we can get Anderson done.
We have a question in the chat box from Pamela. What is the estimated hoped for date for completing the Pacheco project?
I don't have the answer to that one. I don't know if Nina's on here or anybody else from water utilities.
We could send that to, we will send that to a subject matter expert and email you a response.
Right.
Okay. So at this time, we had an activity plan, but I have a statement from Mara, who's been having technical issues. So let me just quickly read that to you. I know we're all working with a new format and a new reality and really trying to make this work. And we've been able to share some really important information with you. So let me read this from Mara. Thank you for joining us this evening. Due to technical issues, Mara was unable to present her interactive activity. And we appreciate your understanding with that not going out under this format. And we will work on exploring ways to better plan and prepare for managing these future technical difficulties as we transition into this new environment. Myself included, I acknowledge that as well openly. So thank you for your participation. If you have any more questions, we will include them, or you can still write a few in the chat box, or you can email them. We'll be sending an email right after this session with links to the surveys and further information. So does anyone have any closing questions for any of the speakers? No, thank you so much for participating in this time, in this new environment, and keeping this moving forward. Actually, we do have one question from Roy. Roy?
This question is for Karen. Karen, do you know that the rebate money that you get for the water conservation program is taxable?
That is an excellent question.
I had to pay income tax on that when I did my yard.
Yeah.
Just FYI.
You know what? That is such a good question. We get asked that all the time. We still collect W-9s on people's rebates over $600 because the federal government requires that we do. The state government, I think, came out and made a determination that water rebates are not taxable. We've been lobbying the feds to do the same thing and to consider water rebates to not be taxable. It seems only fair. You already paid tax on the thing, so you're getting a rebate. It shouldn't be taxed again, unless I'm thinking of it wrong. But you know, for energy rebates, they got that passed, but for water, we haven't gotten there yet. So we're working on it, and we understand it's a big issue. We're really trying. We're trying. But that's an excellent question.
Good work, because it's working well for my front yard.
Yeah, and I want to add to that, Roy, that and Karen did mention it. We are pursuing it at the federal level. There's a multitude of agencies trying to pursue this. It's not just us. What happens is when people come in and say, "Hey, I want to do the right thing. I'm going to get funding from this organization in order to take a rebate," and then all of a sudden they get a 1099. Of course, they are extremely upset. So that's one of the things we're trying to do is align it with what's going on in the energy sector so that you do not get a 1099 when you get a water rebate. With the change in the House, we were thinking that would occur this session, but right now, I don't know what's going to occur this session because everybody's focused on coronavirus. Things have changed right now, but that is something that we're actively pursuing. That is a priority of our board of directors. It's a very good question. We will work to get that changed. And see, I saw Nina pop back in here. Nina, I'm happy that you've joined us because we have a few Pacheco questions that I'm hoping that we can get to. Matthew, hopefully you have an idea of those Pacheco questions for the ambassadors.
My apologies. I was dealing with coronavirus.
So the question, Nina, let me just scroll up here. What is the estimated or hoped for date for completing the Pacheco project?
Oh, that's a great question. We have a generic planning timeline for the time to construct, but I do know our estimated break ground date is 2024. And really the construction timeline is predicated on all the different regulatory approvals and agreements we need to get with the various regulatory agencies to build the dam. So we're underway right now at geotechnical and land surveying and a bunch of other great earth related activities and real estate right now, which allow us to understand the soil better out there and understand exactly how to build it effectively and design it correctly. And then that really informs the construction period.
Thank you for that response. So one last thing in closing, thank you all the presenters for contributing, and thank you for the cohort for coming in under these circumstances. You'll receive that email after the event, and you'll also, in a few days as the video processes through the internet, receive the recording of this session. So you have those of you with connection issues that weren't able to participate today, all of you will be able to join, and we will work on those technical issues to really make the next session a bit more seamless. And we appreciate your flexibility as we work through that tonight. Thank you so much for coming in and participating, and we look forward to the next session with you through this platform in 2 weeks. Have a wonderful evening.
Bye.